Hello and welcome to a quick and dirty episode on how to initialize your scene in Arcadia. I'm already in play mode and I have my repl started. If you don't know how to get this far, you should check out my other episode, which I have linked in the description below. So, without further ado, first of all, we will run this function that I have defined, which sets my FPS to something that doesn't burn my computer. If we look at stats, now the FPS is limited to around 20. You can do this if you want to, but otherwise, if you have a faster computer than I, you might not have to. Okay, so with that done, I want to show you how to do this every time you start your game. So we add a hook. A hook is a function in Arcadia core that you can use to attach functions to objects. So we run another Arcadia core function, object named main camera, and we want to add a hook to the start, which is when the game starts. And we want to call this hook set FPS, and we want to call init FPS. Hooks call this function whenever this event happens. You have some different events, and today I'll show you start and update. So on start we set FPS. So on start this function will be called with 2 arguments, but we don't care about the arguments right now. We just call some static functions. So now whenever I start and stop my game, this hook will be called. It's worth noting though that this hook is now added. Oh wait, I need to call the function as well, sorry. Okay, something broke, of course. Oh, I wrote init FPS without a bang. There we go. Now the hook is added to main camera. We exit play mode and the hook disappears. So we need to do this when we're in edit mode. So I press Ctrl+CC again to run this, and you see here which Emacs function that is bound to. So we evaluate this parenthesis pair. Now the hook and state is added. So now we can save the scene, and this hook is persisted, which means every time we click play, this, how do I put it? This won't disappear between play sessions, since it's now stored in the scene. Okay, so now we have an init hook for the FPS. Now we want an init function for our game, and it has a similar signature. We ignore the input parameters, but in it we want to define a holder object, and we already have one, the object name beholder. And then we want to create, let's say, a cube. So we run the Arcadia core function create primitive, and we give it a key cube. If you jump definition, on create primitive, the miracle session dies whenever I click play, so I have to reconnect to miracle. There we go. Now I can jump to create primitive, and here we can see we can use sphere, capsule, cylinder, cube, plane, or quad. Anyway, I want to create a cube. With the cube I want to add it as a child to the holder. So this is another Arcadia core function, child plus, which adds the second argument as a child to the first argument. So holder becomes the parent of cube 1, and then I want to set the position of cube 1. I use the ... macro, which means it's interop with C#. I'll put a link down below where you can read more about this dot macros. We set the position to a vector, and we create this vector, vector 3, because this is a position in a 3D space, using the library Arcadia linear, which contains functions for dealing with vectors. There we go. Now we can run this init function, or we could not. I need to load the file first. Something breaks. Let's see. I'm in the wrong namespace. So I reset the miracle session, so we also need to go to the namespace. So I use miracle eval namespace. Now let's clear the buffer and let's run this init function. There we go. Now we get a cube. Finally. The cool thing about this way to set up a scene is I have a holder and I have a primitive cube. Right now, if I run init many times, we get many cubes. But I want this init function to reset itself. So what we do is we call a function called clearScene, which takes an object. This function is not defined yet, so we define clearScene, and it takes the game object. And what we want to do is loop through all the children of the game object. And then we destroy the children, because we're horrible people. So now each time we run our init function, it will begin with, oh sorry, I need to put this, no, this is fine. So we begin with clearing the scene, which means all children to holder are destroyed. So we run this init function and we only get one cube, no matter how many times we run this. Also worth noting is that in my assets/configuration, I have enabled reload on change. I've set this to true. So whenever I hit save, this whole file will be run. So if I, for example, set this, I change the starting position of the cube to 1, 0, 0 and click save. Then you see the cube moves a bit. And this is really nice. This fast iteration of the initial state of your game is pretty hard to get without Arcadia. So we could also add another cube, let's say C2, and we do the same thing. Of course we could lift this to another function, but now we do this quick and dirty and just save, and we get another cube. And now we can play around with this a bit. Oh, like so maybe. We can also, now after we've created our cubes, we can add some interesting properties to these. Right now they're just static cubes, which isn't very exciting. So we can add a hook to one of the cubes as well. So last time we added a hook to the main camera that triggered on start. Now we want something to trigger on every frame, so we write update, and I want to call this hook move, and we call the function move. And now we can define a function move, which takes a game object and a key. We can call this K. So it will get C1 and move as parameters. So we could do it this way. We could write move fast on this one, and then move slow on this one. And then we could do something like this. We write let old pos and fetch the position of the game object. This is very similar to when we set it, but first of all we just get it. Like so. And then we set the velocity. And then we can do something like this. We do a cond on, or maybe a case on K, and then we want move fast. Then we do a kind of fast cube like this. and then let's see, like this, we do move slow, and it will move at 1/5 the speed. And now this function is being run every update, so every frame. So every frame we set the position, just like we did when we initialized. We set the position of the game object to, now I use another linear function, v3 plus, which adds two vectors together. So we add the old pos to velocity, which will be different things depending on what k is. Okay, something broke. I'm gonna try loading it here to see. It seems like it should work. So why isn't it working? It says move gives invalid IL code. Is maybe case is wrong. I might be using this wrong, so I'm gonna go with cond because I'm more familiar with that. There's nothing wrong in doing oh, wait a second. What you're familiar with, you can always look up the correct way to do stuff later. I think it's very important to have fun with this, because this is something I do for relaxation, not for work. So, and the fault could be, maybe we should just throw an error. Throw, I think, like this. No speed set for k. And we do like this maybe. Let's see if that compiles. Error, didn't work. Maybe we need to import error. I think that would be like system.error. Object reference not sent to instance of object. Maybe it wasn't system error. Or I think let's not throw, because I don't remember the syntax. We're just gonna log it like this. Log is another Arcade core function which writes to the Unity log. So we could write something weird here. Instead of move fast, we write like this, and then it will say no speed set for move away. So now we know we use a erroneous key here. Anyway, here we go. Now we have one object moving fast and the other slow. And like for now, this cube moved out of screen, which we don't want to. So then we just write save again. Oh, if I don't make any change, Arcadia won't notice if I save. What I can do instead is just load the file, or make a super tiny change, like I can add an enter here and then save. But I usually just load the file instead. So you see, every time I load the file, the cubes are reset. So I've shown you how to add start hooks, how to create primitives, and how to add hooks to those primitives, update hooks. Combining this with clear scene, which clears the scene every time you run in it, you have a very interactive environment to play around with. And you should try creating your own hooks. Maybe you can make the cubes rotate, or maybe you can generate a bunch of different cubes on the, random positions, and add a rigid body to them. I'll leave that as an exercise to you, and I think you should play around a bit with this. I hope this was informative, and I wish you a nice day. Bye!